In this video, I'll be explaining how to determine what type of match type each one of your keywords needs to have. Obviously, you'll need to have already done your keyword research and have this completely filled out and have the keywords that you want to use in your ad group selected. But once you have those ready to go, then you can start to determine what type of match type you are going to use on each of these keywords. Most of the time, we're trying to decide whether to use broad match or phrase match. You really only want to use exact match when you only want to show up for exactly that specific keyword and nothing else outside of it. Obviously, it'll include misspellings and stuff, but essentially the only time we really want to use that is when we're wanting to target a very specific product or a very specific type of customer that would be looking up that exact search term. Most of the times when we're starting a new campaign and we don't have a ton of data, we like to stay away from exact match and try to determine whether we're actually going to use broad match or phrase match to get in front of a bunch of different search terms in order to collect data on what type of search terms are actually going to work best for our campaign. The two ways you can kind of try to determine what type of match type you're going to use can be either based on the number of negative keywords you found or based on your budget. Obviously, businesses with larger budgets are going to be able to afford to spend money on keywords that may not be as effective for them in the hopes of finding keywords that are more likely to be effective for them in the future. So the smaller the budget you're working with, the more phrase match search terms you're going to want to use. However, this can slow down the performance of a campaign and take it longer to get up and running full speed, whereas with broad match, you're going to show up for a lot of search terms a lot quicker. And if you're actively managing the campaign, you can basically filter through these in the first couple of days and start to find out what type of search terms you want to show up for more, and then from there filter down your keywords to more precise keywords that use phrase match on the search terms that were showing up properly. If you're confused on the different terminologies that I'm using here, go watch our videos explaining the difference between search terms and keywords to get a better understanding of how to go about this process. Or a quick Google search will suffice and showing you the difference between broad match and phrase match. The second way you can determine the match type of the search terms or of the keywords you're going to be using is based on the negative keywords that you found for those search terms. So the more negative keywords that you found for the search terms, the more likely it is that you're going to want to use phrase match, because obviously using it as a broad match created a bunch of possible negative search terms that you could show up for. This is why we go in and we find negative keywords before we start the campaign, is in order to prevent bad spend and bad clicks to our website from the get-go before we even collect any data. But you're not going to catch everything via SEMrush, obviously. So another way you can go about determining if everything needs to be phrase match or broad match or a little bit of both is based on the number of keywords or number of negative keywords that you found. This is obviously very subjective and open to interpretation based on your industry and how precise you're wanting to be with your ads off the rip. We recommend that you typically do a mix. You don't want to make everything phrase match. We honestly prefer to leave everything broad match if possible, but we don't mind throwing in some phrase match in there as well to see if those possibly perform better because they are shown to a more specific audience. However, it's kind of open to interpretation as to what is going to work best for your business. So we obviously recommend doing it based on the budget of your campaigns. So the smaller budget you have, the more likely it is you're going to use phrase match. The larger the budget you have, the more you can use broad match. And the more negative keywords you have, the more likely it is that you can actually use broad match because you've filtered out most of the negative keywords already. So if you have a minimal amount of negative keywords, you may want to look into using phrase match because it's unlikely that you're going to show for services that aren't related to your business anyways. But obviously, there's also the back end of that is that if you didn't find a lot of negative keywords, there's not a lot of negative keywords for you to show for, and therefore you can use broad match. So as you can see, it can get kind of confusing, and there's no one correct answer. So if you ever need help with this, feel free to reach out and get our advice and expertise on what you should do for a campaign. But just as a quick summary, the more budget, the more broad match; the less budget, the more phrase match. Hope this video helps, and we will see you in the next one.